Hey, what's going on, guys? My name's Cody. I'm a private boater, and today I want to talk about trip planning for an Illinois river trip. I'm in the middle of currently planning for one, hopefully coming end of March, and it kind of made me think of I wanted to share the things that I found when I was trying to run the Illinois for the first time, because I feel like there is a lot of good information out there, but it's not in one place. The Illinois doesn't have a guidebook like you would have on the Middle Fork or any of the salmon rivers, the Rogue River. Uh, I think for a few things, right? Because one, it's not as commercially ran and not as privately ran as those other rivers. And so somebody making a guidebook has to make that money back. And so if they're only selling 10, 20, 30 guidebooks a year, it's not worth their time. And I think the other reason there's not a good guidebook on the Illinois is water flows dramatically change the river. 100 CFS can be a difference between running on the right side versus the left side, or there's it will take rapids away or add rapids as you drop in water levels. So I think those are kind of the reasons why you don't have guidebooks on it. And so this is the information that I found that really, really helped me out. So first, we'll kind of talk about just kind of where the Illinois is, how to get there. So in reference here is Crescent City, Southern Oregon, Brookings on the coast, Grants Pass, and your river trip starts here in Selma. As you drive in to the town of Selma, if you're coming from Grants Pass, that's the way I come from. Ray's Food will be on your left-hand side, and that is where you will do a self-issue permit for the Illinois. It's obviously not a permitted, a like lottery river. There's no maximum amount of people that can be on it. The U.S. Forest Service just asks for you to use a self-issue permit so they know how many people are on the river, what's the use like. And then when there's big incidents, like there was a flood that happened that ended up being fatal, they were able to know how many people they were supposed to be looking for by self-issue permits. So after you get a permit, go maybe pick up some small things you forgot at Ray's. This is the road that you take to get to the put-in. So there's a little convenience store, like a secondhand store here on the corner, and then you just go straight down this Forest Service road. At first, I couldn't figure out how long it was going to take to drive from Selma to the put-in when I was just trying to plan timing. Because everything I had heard was that it's at a horrible gravel road. It's definitely not the best, but I was thinking it was going to take like 2 hours to go the 16 miles. It probably takes about 45 minutes to an hour to get from Selma to the put-in site. It goes up on this cliff bank along above the Illinois River. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then you just keep on following it here to about this area. Let's see if I can find it quick, to Miami Bar. So you can't miss. It's very well signed. You can't miss the boating site. And there's pit toilets there, and then a huge gravel bar that you can pull your trucks down onto and unload boats and start rigging. So from there, your car has to do the winter route all the way down and around, because your takeout is all the way over here near the confluence of the Rogue River and Agnes at Oak Flats, I believe is the name of it. And I'm going to switch over, and it says takeout for Illinois river trips. I'm going to switch over here because my very first time, I'm always worried about missing takeouts. I'm very worried about being way past where like my truck is. So the one thing, definitely on really low, like on low water trips, you'll see a dramatic change. So up in this area, it's deep canyon walls, very desolate, and then you'll start kind of seeing people. You'll maybe see some swimmers over here or somebody that took a boat over to hike up this creek, and this gigantic gravel bar. And so we, for the first time, stopped all the way up here, and I walked all the way down to make sure where our truck was and where the boat ramp was. And the boat ramp is down here at the end of this gravel bar. So this is where they'll usually park your truck, and you can't pull directly down to the water. This is a pretty steep bank most of the time, but very easy place to just pull boats up and out. And then it's an easy drive home. It's pretty much you're taking out right at where you would for a Rogue River trip. And so I think most people that would be looking at this has done the Rogue River, so they understand where they would be getting from there. Next, I want to talk about river flows on the Illinois. It's, like I talked about, it's a very hard river to time because it swells really quick and goes to a level that is either above your ability, or you might be able to, it might even get above even your ability and just get to a dangerous level. And so trying to get on the river where it's going to be good flows for 3 straight days is tricky. And so I think this is Whitewater Guidebook's a trip report on the Illinois River, and right at the top they have a river flow button. And I think this is the best resource for the Illinois River. So the first one that you'll see is NOAA's river forecast. So these forecasts are updated, I believe, twice a day. And then also, if you didn't know, Water CFS isn't live. It updates every hour. And so what it will do is these forecast machines look at weather and precipitation and knowing where it's following in that watershed, and it will make a prediction of what's going to happen. It is an amazing tool, but it is only a tool because these things are always inaccurate. They might be inaccurate by 1 or 2%, or it might be inaccurate by 25%. So it's a good trend of what's going to happen. So like in Oregon right now, there's a huge front coming through. It's going to rain really hard for a lot of days. And so that's why it can predict, it's going to go up to 14 feet. And anything over 10 feet, this action level, it's not recommended for anyone. For my ability, I don't want to plan on a trip that's above 7 feet. So 19,045 CFS is a great level for me. Definitely on the drop, if I can hit it between 2,000 and 1,000, that's a dream trip for me. With that said, on the Illinois, I think more than any other river is the gauge is a good starting point, but it's kind of useless because the gauge is so high and there's so many tributaries that come into the Illinois River that on the gauge, it might say 2,000 CFS and you could get down there and it's way lower. It could be way higher. You could be at 10,000 CFS at Greenwall. So I think like there is some correlation, but most people will look at the gauge and understand, is it a dry number or is it a wet number? And so what I mean by that is if the river says it's 2,500 CFS and it hasn't rained for 3 or 4 days, those side tributaries aren't going to be dumping in as much water. So it's going to run lower than what it would be like at 2,500 when it's continuously dumping rain. You might be quadrupling or even more as you get down that river canyon, and you pass tons of tributaries. So it you could get yourself into a situation where if you go on that river right at your top level and it's raining, that you could get down to Greenwall and have very significantly more flows than what you would think. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. It would be awesome if there was this top gauge and then a bottom gauge near the confluence. And maybe at some point they'll get that in. So next one is just a longer trend. I really don't look at this at all. By the time you're 18, this 18th, 19th, 20th, I mean, you're 10 days out. There's so much change in weather between now and then that I don't even pay attention to this. And then this is kind of a experimental one that it's percentage based. I don't really look at it. And then finally is the actual gauge height. And so this actual gauge height here is what I look at a lot. And then the predictor. So those two together. And then I will then look at 5 weather forecasts. I'll look at the town of Selma, Cave Junction, Brookings, Crescent City, and Agnes. And I'll kind of figure out what's going there. Because Selma might be dry, but it might be pouring on the coast 30 miles away. And that water is going up onto the mountain ranges that funnels down into the Illinois Canyon. And so you might be encountering higher flows than you expect. So that's kind of how you get there. Flows on the water, kind of when you should be looking at it. And now it's trying to figure out how do I get myself down the river? Is it within my ability? And kind of how do I get beta on this river? So with this said, everything in videos look easier than it actually is. So if you're watching, and I brought up, this is Gear Garage, this is Zach from Northwest Rafting Company. He does these video trip reports, and I think these are the best resource for kind of getting an idea of what the river's like. Getting an eye on target hazards. But with that said is if you can't read Whitewater, you should not be on this river. And it's mainly for the fact that there's over 100 rapids. A lot of them are 3s and above. And so if you can't read and run class 3 water, probably 3+, 4 water, with your 4+ and 5s being the ones that you might feel like you need to get over and scout for, then this isn't the river for you because it's going to take way too long. If you had to pull over at every class 3 rapid to scout, one, trying to find a place to pull over is not going to happen. And then 2, it would take you weeks to get down the river because it just would take you so long. So this is a great start. I found these incredibly useful, definitely on like rapids like York Creek. York Creek takes 3 turns through it. And if I didn't have an idea of what was around that next bend, I might not be setting myself up to river right when the flow seems like it'd be fine if I could just stay river center. So I think it's a great place to start. I think seeing it at completely different flows is a great way to look at it. But that video trip report number 6, I think is the one I watched the most. It's just very well detailed. It hits all the high rapids. But yeah, that's all I got on that. So got 2 last things, and it's kind of building cheat sheets. So when you're on the river, so this is put on by this is on CaliforniaCreeks.com. I believe this might be done by Indigo Creek. I think Creek might have been the one that created this. If somebody else did, I'm so sorry. But this was the best written resource that I found. This has tons of river miles. It's got pictures. It kind of has all of the high rapids on it. So in any video, like you guys have been on multiple rivers, that everyone just videos the big rapids. Nobody's videoing number 11, 12, 13, or you get down in here in between Little Greenwall and Submarine Hole, and they just call it Whitewater Primer. There's just, I don't know, like 25 rapids or something between those two. And so having something like this that kind of keeps you oriented in the river was very, very useful, I found. So what I did was I copied this. I took out all the photos, and then I printed it and laminated it through FedEx. And so I had 3 pages back and front, and I kept it in my boat just to kind of be understanding areas that I was hitting, what river mile, and then with that, it was able to understand how fast or slow we were going on the river. So first day, a lot of people go to mile 8. You can go to Klondike Creek, which is 10. You can go to Dead Man's Bar, which is 12 and a half. And then you can also hit like South Bend, which is like 17. So those are kind of your first days, but then your second day is an incredibly long day. And so having this information here was, I found very, very useful and just kind of reassuring. I really like to just keep an eye of where I am on rivers. So the very last thing is, so through Google Maps, you can save pins and come up to my places, come to maps, and Indigo Creek put all these pins on, and you can download them. And so what I did was I downloaded all of these pins onto my Gaia app. And with Gaia, you can download, if you have the paid version, you can download the satellite view. Oh, there we go. You can have all these pins overlaid with it. So I went through, and it has river miles. So that's Illinois River Trail, York Creek, and then York Creek Rapid. They did an amazing job of putting all of the information that you need on like a lot of the big stuff. And so when we were trying to find Dead Man's Bar campsite, it's up above. And so it's like 100 feet above the river. And so you would have no clue that it was there. And I went through, and you can color code all of these. So I went and color coded all of the camps all the river miles, a different color. They already have the river miles a different color on here. But I would really, really recommend doing something like this if it's your first time. And even if you ran it 50 times, it's just a nice thing to have to keep your orientation on a river like this. You cannot see anything. It's just sheer river walls. So it would be easy to get disoriented of, how far you've made it. So outside of that, I think what I'm going to do is do another video on my trip planning, how I pack everything for this type of trip. I go incredibly light, go with backpacking style food. So I make my own dried food, and then do either light, like 1 2-burner light stove, or take backpacking stoves, just to be quick, nimble. Not the whole idea behind a trip like this is not comfort. So outside of that, if you guys, I will post all of these URLs in the comments below. If there's anything that you're trying to do on your river trip, please reach out. I'm not the best resource out there. There's a lot of people that are way more knowledgeable on this river than I am. But be happy to help anyone out to get a trip together if they needed it. So outside of that, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys out on the water.